Hey everybody, welcome once again to Football Fandemic, where today we are going to be talking playoff games, we're going to be talking coaching carousels, we're going to be talking finalists for awards at the end of the year, and the games coming up, all that and more here on the Football Fandemic. Now, I didn't say it in the intro, but I feel like I'm going to say it right here at the beginning just so that it is noted. We are also talking a good bit about what's going on with the Commanders. Our one of our past co-hosts, Josh Houpt, has, as you might imagine, been weighing in with us. He can't be on here because this happens during his real work time schedule, and he is doing that. But we are going to hit some Commander stuff. That we're going to have the Houpt hour, but it won't be an hour. Okay, that's just
much less than an hour.
The two H's are great together, so we left that. So Josh, if you're listening, no, Commander stuff is coming also. But before we get into that, there are definitely coaching things happening in the world because teams are finishing up and now decisions are being made. The biggest, kind of the most talked about that I've heard anyway, are all of those Lions coordinators going whoosh and flying to other teams. So let's talk about some of those. Somebody just start throwing out names and let's talk about them.
Oh, let's start with the big name that came out of here, Ben Johnson. He's been a hot head coaching candidate, not just this offseason, last offseason too. And remember, he came out and said, I feel like we got something really special here in Detroit. My job is not done. Right. And although they did not win the Super Bowl, spoiler alert for when we review the games, they did have a very impressive Lions season and the greatest one in Lions franchise history.
He did address those comments in his press conference. He says, we've built the runway there. So I guess he's saying, I've got it all set up. They're going to be okay without me. Yeah. Whether or not that's true. That's the coach speak, right? He's already learning.
and then he goes to a place where a runway needs to be built. Right.
And you're so excited because you want to see this franchise get better, right?
Oh, 100%. Right.
Both of you do. Both of you are just like, you're like salivating, thinking, oh, the Bears are finally going to be good.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. All right. We heard the same thing when Matt Nagy came in. Oh, my gosh, this offensive guru coaching Patrick Mahomes from Kansas City. In all fairness, he was coach of the year. Like, put a little bit of respect on that one season he had with Mitch Trubisky. And then he was cut like 3 or 4 seasons later. And then, oh my gosh, Matt Eberflus is going to completely revitalize this franchise. Ryan Poles is in. He's going to completely help us do a lot of things. They remained roughly about the same. It was not much different.
Now,
they got Justin Fields, right?
Eberflus was the defensive coordinator in Indy, and I thought he was a great defensive coordinator, but I had my real doubts about him leading a whole team and how that would even work offensively, like who he was going to have in there to do that. I didn't recognize the name and feel like it was a powerhouse that he had in that place. Mm-hmm. So I was a little less than excited about like what Eberflus would do there. I didn't feel like he was going to change everything. Maybe Bears fans, though, in their optimism, put that all aside and said, "Yes, we're awesome now."
Yeah,
the Bears are nothing but they're optimists, no matter what. That's the fun thing about Bears fans is watching that optimism turn into dust.
It's a weird balance because they have on one hand this like unfounded optimism, and then at the exact same time this dreaded pessimism that as long as the McCaskies are involved, nothing's going to be good. And they'll hold those two things at the same time. They're good at holding things in tension. They'll hold them both up. We're going to win everything, and the McCaskies are jerks, and we're going to lose until they're gone. And that will always be the Bears fans I know. That's what they all say.
Yeah, and my perspective is they do have both of those things, Matthew, but they vary on the scale depending on the point of the season, right?
Well, yeah, during the season, starts with the optimism.
The McCaskies are awful. We need to sell the team. We need to do all this, and we heard that in their last home game of the season. Sell the team. After the game finished, every fan of the stadium was chanting it. The end of the season, right? But it's gonna happen like week 4.
Right. Beginning of the season, the optimism is up.
Yeah. And so right now, their optimism is up. Right now, they've already got a clear path to Caleb Williams being the MVP. They've already got a clear path to him somehow also winning the Offensive Player of the Year. They got some sort of Defensive Player of the Year in there. They have their new Coach of the Year and their Super Bowl champions. That's where they're at right now.
You are probably making so many friends of all the Bears fans who listen to this. They love you, by the way.
Oh, I know. I love them too.
I think it is obviously a good hire. I mean, he, like Brandon said, he was the top name out there for head coaches, probably even more so than Mike Vrabel, who was the first guy off the board. But it is going to be interesting to see how that works. We've seen offensive coordinators that have been these gurus in the past get to teams, make that next step to be a head coach and have it just kind of all crumble. And you think of guys like Adam Gase, who was like a big guy.
That guy's eyes are weird.
They definitely are. And then you have Nathaniel Hackett, who was one and done in Denver. And then you have also Matt Nagy, again, like you had mentioned. But I think the common denominator there is those guys all had elite quarterbacks that also helped their offense work. And Jared Goff is good. Like Adam Gase had Peyton Manning, Hackett had Aaron Rodgers, and Nagy obviously had Patrick Mahomes. So they don't necessarily get that same benefit of the doubt that I think Ben Johnson is going to get, because Jared Goff is good, but he's not elite. And I mean, before Ben Johnson got there, Jared Goff was really bad under Anthony Lynn as the offensive coordinator in Dan Campbell's first year. So there is like something to be said that Ben Johnson isn't in the same mold as those guys. At the same time, Caleb Williams and Jared Goff play a completely different style of football, where Caleb is much more of an improviser, and we didn't see him play as much in structure throughout this season, where Jared Goff was only in structure, and if anything was out of structure, the play would break down. So I think there's going to be a process to work through that with Caleb Williams. I don't think just because that was the offense that Ben Johnson ran in Detroit that he can't run any other sort of offense. And I think he can work to Caleb Williams' strengths and do a lot of those rollouts. But Caleb Williams is going to have to be disciplined and play some of that structure at the very least if this Bears team wants to have success.
Yeah.
And if I were anybody, Ben Johnson coming in would make me excited more than probably most of the other prospects out there. So there's that.
I do want to just stick in the NFC North, get through all four teams really quick. We talked about Detroit. They lost a couple people. We'll talk about their defensive coordinator in a minute. We talked Chicago, new head coach. They're filling in the rest of their staff as we speak. There was a very exciting thing that happened in Minnesota, not a new coach hire, but something that I think Josh is really excited about.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell signing an extension. The details I don't think have been released yet. They said it was a multi-year extension, but I believe the reports are from sources within the Vikings, like the beat reporters and everything, the guys that have the sources. They're saying that the deal should last through 2028. It's a 3-year extension. Or maybe 2028, and is going to be about $15 million a year. So that's $2 million more than Ben Johnson is going to be making in his first run as head coach. And yeah, I think it's a great sort of idea. I mean, I like Kevin O'Connell. He kind of blends the best of both worlds between a schematic sort of head coach like Ben Johnson and then the motivational CEO also type coach like Dan Campbell is, the guy that can build culture. He's done a good job building culture. Every time the Vikings won, they would post these locker room videos. And yes, it's easy to build that culture when you're winning, but like this is a team that was he's encouraging his guys, and I'm sure a lot of head coaches do that, but it just seemed to me like it hit at a different level than whenever you'd see those videos of Mike Zimmer doing it, for example, when he was the Vikings head coach. So I love the move, and I am excited for many, many more years of Kevin O'Connell. He also gets to keep most of his staff. Josh McCown, the quarterback's coach, has not been hired elsewhere yet because he only wants to be a head coach. And then Brian Flores also has not been hired yet. I mean, maybe the Saints or Cowboys or Raiders try to get him. But as of right now, it looks like most of the O'Connell's coaching staff is going to be intact heading into 2025.
And just for everybody out there, it is not Aiden O'Connell who was extended, as Josh told us, nor is it Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When he put AOC,
Slightly different.
I'm like, who is being what here? It's Kevin O'Connell. And
that might be one of the one of the biggest things we see in this generation of career changes. Straight from Washington D.C.,
To the
working in
Minnesota
politics,
Vikings.
to Minnesota Vikings head coach.
Well, Condoleezza Rice was once rumored to be a candidate for the Browns head coaching job,
Yeah.
like 6 or 7 years ago. So it's
She's
not
always-
unprecedented.
She's
Yeah.
been rumored to be so many things: a presidential candidate, a NFL owner, a whole bunch of stuff. She was like big friends with Andrew Luck and the Stanford connection there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And let's finish out the NFC North. The Packers still have our head coach.
I was going to say, did anything change?
As far as we know, our defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, is here to stay. He
Mhm.
was called in for the head coaching interview in New York for the Jets. And miraculously, they hired a gentleman from Detroit, their defensive coordinator.
Yes.
So Hafley is here to stay in Green Bay, at least for another year. Fans are ecstatic.
You don't think there's anybody else who will want to interview him?
No one's requested an interview yet. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints brought him in or another organization did. But as far as we understand, we feel like it was just the one and done interview.
Okay, so that's the NFC North. What other? I know not every team is going to have news, but what other teams? I'll tell you one. The Indianapolis Colts have hired the Bengals their defensive coordinator who was fired as their scapegoat for the year. At least that's what Indianapolis is saying. Oh, he was scapegoated. He's really good. We got him. I went back and looked at some of his stats, and he was not necessarily great. I think it was 2021. He had a really good year. I think it was 2021. But then the years around that, he was like bottom 10, bottom 5 for defense in several categories, which is not exciting to me. Everyone is saying, oh yeah, but when they stripped him of all of his good players, that's when, but the thing that was supposed to be in his favor is he builds his defense around the players he has instead of a scheme, which you want to hear. But like, I don't know that I actually saw that unless the players were just so bad. Now, I don't know all the defensive players in the Bengals, but I know that Joe Burrow was out there putting up lots and lots of points and sometimes still losing because their defense was giving up so much. So is this exciting for me? Not yet. Not yet at all. We'll see if anything changes.
Matthew, maybe it's the master plan to kick Anthony Richardson into a different gear and get him scoring like 49 points a game. Although you lose the game, but now you have an elite quarterback that can do it, and then gut your defense, get a whole new system in there.
The thing is, that was this year's scapegoat, our defense. Gus Bradley, he was the sacrificial lamb this year. Ballard and Steichen were on hot seats. Ballard more than Steichen, our GM, more than our coach. But Steichen wasn't scot-free. People were not excited about how he was handling the calling of the games and the benching and all this kind of stuff. And so they don't. If we lose, they're both gone. I don't think it's going to be just like sacrifice the defense again. The fans will not stand for that. And so I don't know what next year is going to be. And I've heard all of the rumors. Oh yeah, we're going to tank hard and get Arch Manning. Well, everybody likes to talk about that. I don't. I never like to talk about tanking to get someone because it so rarely works out that you're going to tank well enough to get just who you want. What's going to happen is you're just going to have a junk season and then you're going to get somebody else. Anyway, I want Anthony Richardson to be good, but we need to find out who he is next year. I don't think it's a tank season. I think they're going to be trying to win. So we'll see what, I don't even know what this guy's name is. What is this guy's name?
It's Lou Anarumo.
Lou Anarumo. I should get to know that since I'm going to be saying it every week probably.
Yeah, and I can't speak to like the previous 4 years. But when I saw stuff like this year, it was I don't know if it was scheme at all. At least for 2024 specifically, it was guys never able getting it off, be able to get off blocks. It was guys kind of just like getting through at times and just whiffing on tackles and players missing tackles. So hopefully the
Hopefully it was
scheme
just they were
wasn't the
so
issue.
bad. They were
And
just
yeah,
such bad players.
yep,
The Bengals decided we don't need anybody on defense because we got Joe Burrow and Chase. We'll just go that route.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Who else? What else coaching wise has happened?
Well, I saw on Twitter that Jacksonville was trending yesterday or the day before that. And typically when Jacksonville's trending, it's either because of a Limp Bizkit album that has come out, or it's because the Jaguars are having some kind of drama going on. And in this case, it was the drama. No new Limp Bizkit album. So sorry to all those fans.
I just want to say I predicted this. I think I was the one who predicted Balky out.
Yep. So Trent Baalke goes out. But before that, it was because Liam Cohen turned down the Jaguars head coaching job, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. I don't know if he was offered the job, but it seems like he was the favorite to land that job until he took his name out of the running. He had interviewed well on both of his interviews. And I mean, I think you can probably draw a conclusion when 2 hours after that news breaks, it's that Trent Baalke is out as the general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nobody wants to work with Trent Baalke, and Shad Khan apparently didn't know that until Liam Cohen forced him to look into the mirror, I guess.
You'd think guys who are billionaires would like have really good research teams that would point out the things that all the fans already know. It's like, man, Balky's just messing up team after team after team here. Why are we keeping him? Yeah.
To be fair, Matthew, I think the tool that everyone uses within those organizations is just PFF. Except the Jets, they use Madden, right?
yeah, that's what they use because PFF is great. I love what PFF does, but they get just tons of young men and women. I assume women. I know mostly young men who just sit and watch these games and write down all these stats and then turn them in. And they just have this huge base of stats coming in, so it's everything is graded, and that's good. But man, as a general manager, you got to be more forward thinking than just what happened in the past. It's what, what's going to happen. And what happened in the past is a big predictor, but you could see with Baalke what happened with the 49ers and such. So yeah, Jacksonville, they got rid of Peterson, right?
They did. They fired Peterson.
And they have Baalke. So they have nothing right now.
No head coaches,
no GM.
And they missed out on the top guys of the cycle because nobody wanted to work with Trent Baalke. It should be an attractive place for somebody to work with. Trevor Lawrence, and some parts there on defense. But I mean, that is how much the Baalke must kept people away from Jacksonville.
Wouldn't it be crazy if that guy put his name back in the running after the Baalke firing?
That would be a major indictment on
that would
Trent
be
Baalke.
Yeah.
What do we think? Kind of moving back real quick to the NFC North, without the coordinators for the Lions, is this team going to take a major step back, a little step back, or do you guys think they'll be all right?
Here's the thing. I think Dan Campbell right now is such a figure, and I don't think it's just among us fans. I think people in the NFL look at him and they're like, man, he can get his players to run through a brick wall. You hear that all the time, but man, he really can. He could almost get me to run through a brick wall, and I'm soft. I'm not a football player. And they see that. They also see the talent that is there, and yeah, they had tons of injuries on defense that are going to come back. And so I think people who are good coordinators, as long as Dan Campbell knows what he's looking for to bring in to kind of hold that continuation, I think it's an attractive place. I think it is a place people would want to come, which has not always been the case for Detroit. As a matter of fact, it used to be, you say the word Detroit and people are running, laughing. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think he's done a really good job of changing perception and showing kind of who he is and who the players can be. And so he'll have his pick, I think, of people who are available.
Someone I think that would be really exciting that's been a head coach released this past year, allegedly rumored to return to San Francisco as their defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, almost as the highest paid defensive coordinator in NFL history, which would not surprise me. I could also see him being very attracted to this Detroit position. They're like, they've got stuff going on. They get injured, they're out, and these guys are filling in at a top level. Like,
Now
I want to work with a defense like
he's
that.
been dancing with the Packers here at the end of their season a little bit. Would he
Well,
go
yeah.
do that?
Well, so he came to Green Bay as a, like an
Consultant.
unofficial official consultant, right? He was
Yeah.
still being paid $20,000 a week by New York, and he is for the next 5 years because his contract is all guaranteed. And so he can really go anywhere he wants to do anything. And if I was him, I mean, he is best friends with Matt LaFleur, but they were each other's best men at each other's weddings. I mean, there's a very tight connection
It's a
there.
big deal.
But so was Sean McVay. Like, he was also in that group with those guys. And so just the competitive spirit between the three of them, I could see that being appealing for Robert Saleh to say, hey, I'm going to go take this defensive coordinator job in Detroit. See you twice a year, bud. I could also see him like staying with the Packers if he wanted to, but I think he's going to try to cash in while he can.
Yeah, because he's not going to usurp Jeff Hafley. I mean, so maybe if Jeff Hafley were, I mean, I don't think he's going to, but if he were to get one of these like open head coaching jobs, maybe Robert Saleh stays. I think he wants to be a defensive coordinator, maybe, and he even has still some head coaching prospects out there with some of these spots that are open. To further Matthew's point about Detroit being not having been an attractive place for coordinators in the past. The last time that Detroit had one of its coordinators hired away directly to become a head coach was when Lee Harvey Oswald was a free man and John F. Kennedy was the president of the United States.
So you're saying recently.
So I do think it is
pre-Super Bowl era.
Yeah, right? it would have to be. Yep. So that was the last time that the Lions had one of their coordinators hired directly away from them. I mean, there's probably some coordinators that went on to a couple different teams and went on to become head coaches. But I think it is going to depend completely on who those defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators are that come in. Like Dan Campbell has the culture built there. He's the engine to this thing. And now you just need to get the right key in place to make sure the scheme works. I think Jared Goff, like, Ben Johnson might have gotten the most out of Jared Goff that anyone could be able to. And so I think the quarterback is also a little bit concerning, but Goff still is able to get it done. He was able to get it done with the Rams, got them to a Super Bowl once, and they have still the best offensive line probably in football to protect him, and a very good running game. So the pieces are all there. I think they are going to take a little bit of a step back, but I don't think it's going to be like going from 15 wins to 6 wins next year. I think it's still going to be a very competitive Lions team. And I think all 4 of these teams are going to have a shot at the division, especially if Ben Johnson works out.
It's going to be crazy. The NFC North was strong this last year, and if they all kind of increase, crazy.
Yeah. Well, here's my other question with Detroit. What is the likelihood Dan Campbell promotes from within? People that have already been there, that understand what they're doing now, and then backfill, let's say, a quarterback coach. I have no idea who these coaches are for Detroit. Yeah. Full transparency. Or an offensive line coach promoted to offensive coordinator and backfilling that position.
Ben Johnson is trying to get the offensive line coach to come over to Chicago with him. So good reason there. But so I mean, Detroit could use that. I mean, he could their offensive line coach, I forgot his name, but he could use that as kind of a leverage tool and say, hey, why don't you bump me up to the OC position? I know what sort of schemes that Ben ran, and so that he doesn't get lost to a division rival.
That's true. That's true. Those things that you don't know because it's all that relationship stuff, and you don't get to see like who's really like brain-wise doing what in all of the meetings and how integrated are they. But that will be interesting to watch to see if there's any internal hiring.
Yeah.
What about the other divisions in the world of NFL?
Mike Vrabel.
Yes.
And New England.
Yeah.
I don't know if we covered that last week.
We talked about that last week, and like how I thought a year ago that would happen, like lickety split, and when it didn't, I was a little bit surprised. And so when it happened this year, I was like, yeah, that makes total sense.
Aaron Glenn to the Jets. We briefly mentioned it.
Right.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I saw Aaron Glenn on Hard Knocks, and it seems like he has some of that head coaching stuff to him. like it was definitely more of that sort of fire and brimstone personality from what Hard Knocks showed us. So I mean, some guys that's gonna rub perhaps the wrong way, and I mean, there's just a lot of things in flux in New York where I really
So
can't say heads or
much.
tails if this team is going to be any good or not. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on if Aaron Rodgers wants to stay, and if Aaron Rodgers stays, if Garrett Wilson is able to, push their beef, whatever it was, aside, and keep like Devontae Adams there and all that. And if that's the case, they still might have a good shot. But I think Aaron Glenn definitely has some work to do on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have a general manager yet either. So as of right now, he's the guy in charge.
Yeah. We also have Mike McCarthy out there interviewing for positions. I know he was a candidate in Chicago. Kind of surprisingly last minute cut from Detroit after being declined to interview for other head coaching jobs, right? They requested, we would like to bring Mike McCarthy in for an interview. Jerry said, absolutely not. He's my guy.
With
And then 2
Cowboys.
weeks.
You said Detroit. I
Yeah.
thought, was he interviewed for
my
an
bad.
OC?
My bad. No, that was 100% not what I meant. With Detroit, with Dallas. Man, it's a real Drew Lock situation here in Wisconsin.
You were with me.
With Dallas, because they talked to Jerry Jones. They said, hey, this was Chicago. We want to bring Mike McCarthy in to interview for our head coaching job. Jerry Jones said, yeah, no, absolutely not. He's our guy. And then Jerry Jones said, actually, yeah, Mike, you're out.
Have him if you want him. And they're like, no, we got Ben Johnson. We're fine.
Yeah. And so he did a couple interviews. I think he interviewed with the Saints as well. He interviewed with Chicago just before they hired Ben Johnson. And we'll see where they come out. But as far as I understand, they haven't hired a head coach yet in Dallas either, right?
Yeah. I think Josh last week floated the theory. I want to get your take on it. Is it Jerry Rice we were talking about?
No, it was Deion Sanders. Jerry Jones spoke to Deion Sanders about the head coaching, and there's like conflicting reports saying that Deion Sanders would be interested if he got the job or if he got offered the job. And there's been other folks that have said no, this isn't really like something that is being seriously talked about. So I don't really know where all that is at, but it would be an interesting hire. It would keep the media attention down there on the self-titled America's team.
Yeah, I like Deion Sanders more than I like Jason Garrett in that position.
Oh my goodness, Jason Garrett.
But out of complete honesty, I don't know if Deion is the right long-term solution. We saw him at the beginning. He's in Colorado still, right? He's in Boulder.
Yep.
As the head coach over there. They took like the first 6 weeks of college football by storm. Oh my gosh, this is like the greatest team we've ever seen in the history of college football. Not true. And then
it's like the Bears.
Yeah. And then everyone kind of figured out what he was doing, and then they quickly declined. I don't know what they finished at, what Colorado Boulder finished at, but they weren't a finalist in the playoffs or anything.
Yeah, so that was in his first year. This last year, they were, because of how they ended last year, which I think was only one win in the Pac-12. This past year, they didn't have the expectations, and people were kind of like saying, "Oh, this is going to be one of the bottom feeders." They did tie for the top of the Big 12 conference with 4 other teams, but they didn't have the tiebreakers, so they didn't play for the Big 12 championship. And if they had won the Big 12 championship, then they would have been into the playoff. But so he did like work with like what he had and rebuild the program up to kind of shut down the haters or the naysayers or whatever, and make that Colorado program like relevant again.
And the big thing is he would have very special influence over a couple players. Is what Jerry Jones could be thinking, right? His son and one of the top quarterbacks in the class.
Yeah, and I like him in college still because he's still young enough to be relevant for this generation of kids that he's recruiting to play for him. It'll be a little bit different in the NFL than it is at Boulder. So I don't know if it's a complete apples to apples comparison. I like him in college right now. I could see him making a move to the NFL at some point. and we'll go from there. But I'm not exactly sure who Dallas, not Detroit, who Dallas is going to bring in.
Right.
But
Seems like
he
it's way up in the air with no kind of insight yet. At least what I've seen.
Hey, is Peyton Manning available?
Nope.
He's got the Pro Bowl to prepare for. He's coaching the Pro Bowl.
Right.
And his Manning cast, he's no.
Have I given my theory on Peyton's like 10-year plan yet on this podcast?
I don't know.
I don't think
feel
so.
like you said something about the Browns or something.
We're almost to the end of that 10 years.
We are.
Well, so my official theory is once Roger Goodell is out, Peyton Manning is in.
Now that would make 100% sense. He has that sort of clout and that sort of
I would love it. I think that's the perfect spot for him, NFL commissioner, Peyton Manning.
But the NFL commissioner is basically someone everybody hates. Does Peyton want to become that? Because he's someone everyone loves right now.
Depends if he does one more nationwide commercial.
Yeah.
On a theme on his name.
Peyton Manning, calculating Manning.
Yeah.
Well, if it's going to be the next guy is going to be somebody everybody hates, then just put Trent Baalke up for that job.
He's already perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Are there any other coaching stuff? I'm trying to think through my divisions, and I can't come up with any big.
I think that covers it.
Yeah, there's just teams waiting. We're just waiting for teams to. I think 4 teams now to get their head coaches, and then we'll have a full set of cards for 2025.
Yeah. There was one report I saw that Cliff Kingsbury was requested for an interview and wanted to wait till after the Commanders were finished.
Mm-hmm.
So Cliff Kingsbury, somewhere in that role, Josh Houpt is going to say, absolutely not. This is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard.
A very hot commodity because of what he did in Washington, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But not yet. First, we're going to talk about the finalists for all of the end of the year awards has been released, and we're going to take a look at these. And I'm not going to lie, these two guys beside me probably know a lot more about most of these people. I know some of these people. I haven't got a chance to kind of go through the list with a comb yet, but we're gonna go through this and just talk about do we feel like anybody important was left out, and of the ones who are the finalists, who do we think might have the most realistic shot at winning these? And so let's let Josh lead us through this one. Josh.
Yeah, so we'll start with the big one, the MVP, and there are 5. All of these have 5 nominations. For this one, 4 of them are quarterbacks. And we'll go with the ones that aren't the front runners. It's Joe Burrow and Jared Goff are in there, and then Saquon Barkley, the running back, as well. But I think since about the midway point of the season, it's been a 2-man race between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is going to win it, and that would be my choice as well. I just love the way, even though, I mean, because it is a regular season award. So Josh Allen, yes, he beat him in the playoffs, but the votes went in before the playoffs started, or else maybe Josh Allen would have the case for that award. But I mean, yeah, he did everything well. I mean, if you're looking just at numbers, he had the better numbers over Josh Allen throughout the entire season. I mean, when you rush for 1,000 yards and throw a bunch of touchdowns and are accountable for like 45 touchdowns between passing and rushing, then you're in a pretty good spot. So I like Lamar Jackson to win, but I wouldn't be mad if Josh Allen won. It's
that comes down to that case of the most valuable player is kind of known by, if you took them out, which team would crumble harder? And it's really tough between both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Now, I know Lamar has Derrick Henry, which is big, but Josh Allen had a pretty decent running back as well. And so I don't know.
But not as big as Derrick Henry.
Right.
Like physically or stats wise.
Right. And that's the one thing that makes me lean toward Josh Allen, like put everything on his back a few times. I feel like he put everything on his back solely a few times more than Lamar Jackson did. Lamar had the ability to kind of spread that. Now, Lamar just being Lamar, but Josh Allen just being Josh Allen. They're so similar in so many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to be upset with either one winning.
Same.
You're picking hairs at this point.
I do like Josh surprised Allen. That Joe Burrow was in the conversation. I know he did.
I know
He did
I
really
am
well.
not surprised at all.
But it's that thing of
reason.
without him, what would their team have been?
Yeah.
Right. So
He is the only reason their team was in games, and statistically, he was a top 5 quarterback this season.
If the Bengals had made the playoffs, he would have been my pick. So he's just been he was phenomenal all year long.
what kind of stats did Saquon Barkley end up with?
The 8th best running season in NFL history, only 100 yards away from Eric Dickerson's all-time record for a season.
Yeah. And he could have, in that one game, with that one big run, he could have gotten all the way to a touchdown. He probably could have got that. The one where he slid at the end of the game, and everybody's like,
that was in the playoffs. That was in the playoffs.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, that was against a team I know all too well.
He
but
did
he
sit
sat
out
for the last week,
which didn't exist back in the day.
Yeah,
but
true.
So
let's go on to AP Defensive Player of the Year. And some guys here, surprisingly, as Brandon said before the podcast, no safeties. And I think there were a couple, like Xavier McKinney from Green Bay and both of the Detroit safeties could have probably been considered for that. But it's going to be Zach Bond, the Eagles linebacker, who had a breakout season. Myles Garrett, the edge rusher from the Browns. Trey Hendrickson, who I think led the league in sacks. He's from the Bengals. Pat Surtain II from the Broncos, and TJ Watt, the Steelers linebacker. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, like I mentioned before the podcast started, complete disrespect on the safeties. And I only say that because one of them's my boy, X. Yeah. Detroit had a nice safety as well that I think I would also not have been offended to see him on this list. But I am a bit confused by, like, statistically, you look at these secondary players, it's not always like the most flashy stats, but when offenses refuse to throw your way, it's kind of like a compliment to the safety because they're like,
right.
you're quite good, and we're not going to throw your direction because you're either going to pick it off or break up the pass or anything. I think that needs to be looked at a bit harder. I do understand like the impacts that sacks and strip fumbles and all of this has on defensive line. But throughout this, when I imagine this as a Packers fan, it's looking at these defensive players. Which one am I most scared for my offensive line to face? And Packers don't have like a weak offensive line, but like last season, my vote was Max Crosby, who did not get it right, but I thought he was in these top 5. He was in the conversation because I just saw him carve up, and that person for me is still Myles Garrett. I do not want to play him. I know he's the Grim Reaper, and he's just going to take everyone down, and it doesn't matter week by week. Myles Garrett is my vote for this.
And he probably put up like less numbery wise than he has in the past, but and their team didn't win very much, but there's like so many other factors. You're right. He is still like, he's going to wreck your game somehow.
Yeah. I have no confidence putting a guard or a tackle against him and then using a running back or a tight end to also block him. I'm going to want like three points of contact just to give my quarterback the amount of time, which is another huge compliment. We saw it with Aaron Donald all the time. Like, hey, put 3 or 4 guys on him. We can 1-on-1 everyone else. We can't 2-on-1. We can't 3-on-1 this guy. Like, that's a huge compliment to the defense, the defensive player.
I didn't really watch Cincinnati's defense very often, so I don't know anything about Trey. I should have because of the situation I'm in now, and I'll probably go back and watch some of those. But so I can't tell you anything about him. I do know that Patrick Surtain was doing a really good job out in Denver. As far as, again, sometimes when it's not thrown to you, that's the compliment. When things don't come your way. TJ Watt in Pittsburgh.
He's always on this list.
Yeah. That's a tough one for me. I don't know that I can say this is the guy.
Yeah, and just wait for it. If TJ Watt does not get it, JJ's going to tweet out and explain why TJ should have gotten it. Right, it happens every season.
And then they'll have another Peloton commercial together.
Yeah,
I think TJ Watt is the one that I least think should get it. I think he kind of had especially the back half of the season, it was a little bit rough. I like Zach Bond from the Philadelphia Eagles because he is like a complete defensive player. He's been probably the most complete guy. He's the man in the middle, and he's been excellent rushing the passer when he's been called on to blitz, which in Philadelphia isn't a ton of the time. He's been excellent in pass coverage, and he's been excellent against the run. In all three of those phases, he has been one of Philadelphia's best defenders, and that's with a good secondary behind him, that he's been one of Philadelphia's best pass coverage guys. So I think even though Zach Bond's numbers, they probably aren't gaudy, what he was able to do and the effect that he had on the defense, I would like Bond to win that. And we'll go to the offensive player of the year. So this is just like the guy with the best stats, or like but we got Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson.
I'm going to start by saying I don't think they're going to give it to two quarterbacks, MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. So Joe Burrow, as good as he was, he's not going to be it. It's going to go to probably one of the running backs. My guess is Saquon Barkley, just because of the year he had coming from New York, where it was like just disarray everywhere. And then in his first year in Philadelphia, he was like such a key piece of what they did there, of making everything else possible. I think Saquon's going to get this.
Yeah, I think it's between Saquon and then maybe Jamar Chase is like a sneaky dark horse guy because he led the league in all three. He won the receiving triple crown, most receptions, so it just kind of depends on what the voters are valuing more. But I do think Saquon had a greater effect on his offense than any of these other guys did. And that speaks a lot because all of them had a big effect on their offenses. Speaking of offense, we'll stay with the Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think this one is going to be
Definitely
pretty easy.
Not Jaden Daniels, I don't think. No.
Yeah, I meant, where's Caleb Williams on this list?
He's hanging out with Matt Eberflus right now.
Yeah.
We got the tight end Brock Bowers, who
it was good.
We'll give him an honorable mention. He's not going to win it, but he did set a rookie record for most catches by a player, and he's fantastic. But the winner is going to be, well, I'll go through the other guys, and then we'll say who the winner is. Malik Neighbors, Giants wide receiver, good season.
Good receiver, yeah.
Somebody called Bo Nix, Broncos quarterback.
Never heard of him. Which, by the way, Sean Payton at the beginning of the year was like, man, you guys don't even know. Bo Nix is my favorite, and he did pretty well, but I don't think he's on this. I'm kind of surprised he's on this list, to be honest.
Yeah, his numbers were good, but I don't think anyway. Brian Thomas Jr. is the other one, the last one, right. The Jaguars wide receiver, but I think we can all agree the winner is going to be the Commanders quarterback, Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels was great, and Jaden Daniels is not done. If he gets to the Super Bowl, the legend grows. If he would somehow win a Super Bowl, forget it. And Washington will enshrine him as he is the only rookie. He is the only rookie to take a team to the championship game, right? This is the first rookie to take a team to the championship game.
This is if he wins, he would be the first rookie to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, okay. There's been 5 other quarterbacks who have made it to the championship game in the rookie season.
So if he gets to the Super Bowl, from there on, everything's like crazy.
Yeah, I do need to point out of these 5 players, it's a star-studded cast, and 3 of these players were on my fantasy team.
You had Bo Nix and Brian Thomas?
I did not have Bo Nix. My wife had Brian Thomas. I did have Brock Bowers. I did have Jaden Daniels. I did have Malik Neighbors. And out of full transparency, I was not that high on Jaden Daniels. I 100% took him out of spite because I knew Josh would trade the heaven and the earth for him. And when I offered him the trade, it was like week 2, right? Jaden Daniels came out, had a great week 1. I'm like, okay, he's going to start going downhill. I said, all right, give me CJ Stroud. I was high on CJ Stroud. Give me Jaden Reed, and Jaden Daniels is yours. And he said, no, I'm going to stick with my guys. I said, all right.
Josh Houpt, what kind of Commanders fan are you?
So when Josh complains about my dominance in the league, it's because he refused to give me players that would have made my team worse.
I just want to point out, and I know that this is not necessarily all of us on here agree this, but I I, from the beginning, thought Jaden Daniels was going to be the better quarterback than Caleb Daniels, much like I thought C.J. Stroud was going to be better than Bryce Young. Again, a big
I do
part of
agree
it
with
is
that.
the systems they were put in, the stuff they had. I didn't know what Washington had, and I didn't like say they were going to like get to where they're at now. We'll talk about that probably in the Houpt hour. But I did think Jaden Daniels was going to have more success this year than Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So I just like to toot my own horn sometimes.
Hey, that's the purpose of the podcast, Matthew.
That's right.
AP Comeback Player of the Year: Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, J.K. Dobbins, Christian Gonzalez, Damar Hamlin.
Okay, you
And,
skipped one on me there from my list, so I have to
from
look down.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. Did we do that?
Oh, I missed. Oh, sorry. Yep, that's my bad. I scrolled down. I was looking at him. So, Defensive Rookie of the Year: Cooper DeJean, Braden Fisk, Quinyon Mitchell, Chop Robinson, and Jared Verse.
Man, Jared Verse. I heard a lot about Quinyon Mitchell too, but Jared Verse. Man.
Now, the only thing I'm going to say against Cooper DeJean, right? He was a big guy in the Packers room. Ended up going to Philly, right? He didn't play the whole season. Where some of these front seven guys did, and so that's my only thing. Cooper DeJean, I still have a lot of respect. He did amazing things as a corner for Philly, but Jared Verse, like, hard.
Man, Los
hard,
Angeles
yes.
Rams have 2 on this list. Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
So
2
Braden
rookies.
Braden Fisk was actually the guy that led rookies in sacks, but Jared Verse, he only had 4.5 sacks on the season, but his pressure rate was like incredible.
Crazy.
He led rookies in he had 77 pressures during the regular season, which is an insane amount. So yeah, I think he wins that too. But I mean, Cooper DeJean, like Brandon said, if he would have played the full season, would have certainly made a case for himself. But they kind of waited to get him ingrained into the defense, and then after those 6 games where he was sitting out, he became probably the best slot corner in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I do want to ask. So this is the first year in quite some time that the Rams had like a full draft. Is this what happens? They get like star-studded rookies on their defense.
Yeah, Sean
That's scary.
McVay is not going to ever trade away a first-round pick again. Now.
That was his MO forever, and now he's
Yeah,
like, wait, this didn't work out so bad.
It was 2 seasons ago. They didn't pick until day 3, right? Like they had traded everything.
As a fan,
day 1
that
and
is the
2.
worst. Draft comes and you're like, oh, day 1, I don't care. Day 2, I don't care. That's 3. That's 3 rounds. Then you're finally like starting to pick.
Yeah, they took a lineman, and everyone's like, "This is our guy."
A day 3 lineman.
Yeah.
Although it was funny because there's a press conference that year where McVay was talking, and he saw that it was on day 1 of the draft, so they were just doing interviews because they didn't have anything else to do, and they saw that the Bill Belichick picked Cole Strange as an offensive lineman, and McVay said, "Oh, I had him on our board for 2 days from now." So, which is Belichick, excellent head coach, terrible drafter.
Right. Not the best. He had his dog in there doing it. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the AP Comeback Player of the Year, Damar Hamlin, Christian Gonzalez, J.K. Dobbins, Sam Darnold, and Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is probably going to win this just because of the injury factor, and I think that's what they're told to vote on is you have to come back from something like. And I mean, last year would have been Damar Hamlin's year. Should have been Damar Hamlin's.
Does hearing Ghost count as an injury? Because Sam Darnold sure had a comeback. Man,
he did have a comeback. And like if you're going for most improved player, I would go Sam Darnold if that's like what the award would be like centered around. But I don't know. This is like this award is an amoeba where it's like something else every single year that they give it to.
Here's the thing: Damar Hamlin last year, I thought was going to win it. Joe Flacco got it right.
Yeah, should have won it.
But now I don't think Damar this year will win it.
No, because he's played excellent, not excellent, but he's been like their starting safety and has looked good throughout most of the season. But last year he was just on special teams, and like I feel like he should have won it last. Like if he would have had this season last year, he would have been the shoe-in to win it last year.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
I think Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I like the Sam Darnold story.
I do too. I
I
mean,
do. It was good.
if I were like really thinking of, so Joe Burrow has been good through his career. Sam Darnold has never been good till now.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
he's
his,
never
like,
had support, right?
right, right. But I mean, nobody expected Sam Darnold to have the year he had, to go 14-2. Was it
14-3? Yeah. Yep.
14-3? Yeah. So
And then yeah.
when he came in, everybody was just like, okay, they're gonna see how far they can get with him before they switch, next year to JJ. And then he really made conversations happen for a long time about like, well, what happens if they get to the Super Bowl? What do you do with Sam Darnold? What's going to happen with Sam? I mean, that doesn't happen very often, but he did it. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, because of the, I mean, unless they were told it's coming back from injury. I don't even know why he'd be on this list if they were all told it's coming back from injury. So I feel like he could sneak in there, because in people's minds, I feel like Joe Burrow, yeah, he was injured, but he's always been good. He's always been good. Sam Darnold.
Can we just say that starting your career as a Jet is an injury? Like,
that does sound like an injury to me.
Or playing for Carolina is an injury, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say
somehow
somehow Sam Darnold wins this, and like a lot of people are like, "What? He wasn't even hurt."
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have. I got to point this out again in transparency for Mr. Houpt and his revenge. He does think this position or this award needs to be permanently named the Alex Smith Comeback Player of the Year.
Alex Smith, man, that was a comeback.
Yeah.
What he went through.
Yep. AP Coach of the Year: Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and Andy Reid. And for some reason, no Matt LaFleur, who changed the Packers running game structure on like a last second and a week of preparation, and they used that for the whole season. It was effective for the whole season. Won games with Malik Willis, and I'm a Packers hater, and I think Matt LaFleur should have at least gotten a nomination. I'm sure Brandon can go more, even more rage mode on it.
Welcome to my life, right? It's like,
I'm going to go through this this.
I got it when Aaron Rodgers was our quarterback. Like, oh, you'll never get it because you have a superstar quarterback. And Matthew and I talked about that a lot. Right. Same reason when Peyton Manning was in Indy and Bill Belichick had Tom. And I'm like, all right, well, he's out. Like, even last year with Jordan Love, I'm like, what a turnaround in the season. He should at least be honored. And some just nominated. And this year, not even on there. It's just disrespectful to my coach.
I'm going to go through this real quick this way. Sean Payton, he did better with Bo Nix than people thought he would. He's not Coach of the Year. Just going to throw him out right now. Andy Reid, only if you count coaching up the refs. They had so many one score games, and there's this whole like storm of people who are like, man, these games are rigged. And
how many refs
after that game this last week, which we haven't talked about yet, but we're going to, all my X feed was just story after story after story of like people showing like this hit, Patrick Mahomes getting pushed and flopping, Patrick Mahomes ducking under two people hitting and still getting the help. Him, the guy hitting him with his chest. Those were just everywhere. Andy Reid's good, and he is definitely a coach, but Coach of the Year is usually like that one that like raised something higher than you expected. I don't think Andy Reid raised the Kansas City Chiefs. They were already high. If anything, they're a little lower than they were. I don't think Andy Reid should get it. Kevin O'Connell did so great with Sam Darnold. And those last few games are what people are going to remember. I think because of that, I know, it's the whole season, but I think he does not win it as much as he should be in that conversation. I think it's going to come down to Dan Campbell or Dan Quinn. And I think Dan Campbell has kind of been in a conversation long enough that there's this sense that people are like, man, he's due. And they did great. They had the top seed, and now they lost their first game.
And they voted before then.
Right. So we won't know that. Dan Quinn came in and like, obviously, I said it before, people are always like, hey, you have a brand new quarterback and a brand new head coach and a brand new this, and your season like went from 4 wins to where you're at now. Why can't my team do that? Well, not every team can do that. And Dan Quinn's going to be in the conversation because of that. I just feel like Dan Campbell's going to get the honor this year. That's just a feeling I have because of the way he's changed that culture, the way he's raised that. And it's been like continuing. And he was in the conversation last year and could have, maybe should have, but this year with what they did, I think he gets it.
Yeah. And I've been high on Dan Campbell. Matthew and I both have. We've been big Dan Campbell fans since day one of him saying, and we're going to bite their kneecaps off. Like that was the official starting point of Matthew and I's fandom. And every year we have said, there is no way this guy is not coach of the year. Like Kevin Stefanski got it, and we understood that a little bit, but not as much. And now Dan Campbell said, I'm going to like completely change this organization. And he has over a time frame. But like 15-2, the greatest season in Detroit history.
Yeah.
Not an easy feat, right? Actually, maybe it is an easy feat because it's Detroit.
I think they won a NFL championship during the Truman era. So
there you go. But the greatest season that Detroit has ever seen. First seed in the NFC, which was like more competitive than we expected it to be this season.
With Kevin O'Connell.
with Kevin O'Connell there. Like, no disrespect. Like, those two coaches played twice, and Detroit won both times, right? Or is it 1-1?
Yeah. Detroit won both times, yes.
Yeah. Like, he steamrolled everyone. And in the NFC North, which was crowned as like the toughest division in the NFL, excluding Chicago, just with the three teams. And so I see no reason why he shouldn't be. I'm not going to be upset if Dan Quinn gets it. I completely understand that as well. Sometimes I feel like this award is more of most improved coach rather than coach of the year. But if it's like pure brute strength, it has to go to Dan Campbell. And I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. And every single injury he dealt with, every single one. They had 16 players on IR by week 18, and they were still competing.
And not just still
Kevin
competing.
O'Connell.
That defense was
Winning.
decimated, and it was like the strongest at the end. I mean, it was like crazy how hard.
And
they
so
played.
I felt like from week 1 to week 18, or week 17, week 18.
Week 18.
Week 18 with the bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Week 18, Dan Campbell went through the most with his team out of any of these in terms of the actual roster of starting players.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of overturn on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to give it to him.
We still haven't heard from Josh, though. I'm interested to hear.
So there's who I think is going to win it and who I think should win it. I think based on the odds and all of the hype that was coming out, I think Kevin O'Connell is going to win it. For who I think is the most deserving. I think all three of those guys are deserving of the award, and I wouldn't be mad if any of them won. But I think the most deserving, us Joshes have to stick together. We have a weird name where if you elongate it to Joshua, you're kind of pretentious, and if you go with Josh, you're kind of kiddish. So like we need to stick together and be strong with one another. So I'm gonna go with Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn is a guy that, again, took over a Commanders team that nobody thought was going to do anything. And I know Jaden Daniels is a big part of that, and Cliff Kingsbury is a big part of that. But so is turning over a defense that was the worst in the NFL last year. They were so bad. Yeah. And he came in, and this is before Marshawn Lattimore got there. He turned Mike Sainristil into a really good cornerback, and he turned Frankie Louvu into a really good linebacker, made the most out of Bobby Wagner. This team's defense really stepped up when they needed to and made plays a lot of the time. Now, it wasn't a great defense, but they probably had a similar sort of personnel group as like Lou Anarumo did in Cincinnati, but Dan Quinn able to make the most out of it with the coverages that he was doing. So I think that for me, it's Dan Quinn.
I think Dan Quinn is the closest. If somehow Andy Reid wins this, I'm going to be like so mad. I'm just going to put it out there. You're
going to get your pitchfork.
I'm going to, and of course everybody really cares if I'm mad. So there's that.
Yeah, if Andy Reid wins this, it's 100% because the refs were the voters. I mean, that's
refs get double votes.
Yeah.
AP Assistant Coach of the Year. We'll do this one quick. Joe Brady, he's the Bills offensive coordinator. Vic Fangio, the Eagles defensive coordinator. Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator. And Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. I'll just go with the guy that was the hottest name on the coach market, and I'm guessing it's going to be Ben Johnson, and probably deservedly so.
I agree.
Yeah, I also agree. I'm upset that there is not a different name on here.
The story of this podcast.
Everyone knows my love for Jeff Hafley by this point, right?
Yes, we
And
do.
I don't understand. You take a bottom 5 defense and make it a top 5 defense within the span of 1 year. It's hard to do. It's not easy, and he did it better than anyone could have, or just as good as someone like Brian Flores could have. And so the disrespect for Packers coaches, I don't get it.
Okay, so that's our predictions and our kind of thoughts on these awards that are coming up. We will find out on February 6th, 3 days before the Super Bowl. They will let everybody know, and so we'll kind of take a look back and see how we did when we get to that point. But we are going to go back and look at the games that we just watched in the divisional round. Right, we had the divisional round heading into championship games here this next week. We'll get to those in a moment, but. Let's just go through them. There were 2. Why am I confused here?
There were four games
this next week. Yes, there were 4. Let's just talk about each one. Somebody start us.
Yeah, we can start with the first one that happened, and that was the Chiefs-Texans. And I think this game is mostly going to be known for the referee calls against Patrick Mahomes. There were 2 15-yard penalties, both of which, one of which was questionable at best and probably the wrong call. And 95% the wrong call. And then one that was just completely egregious when he was sliding down and nobody hit him. They ran into each other. The 2 Texans defenders knocked each other's helmets, and Patrick Mahomes was unscathed, but they threw the penalty flag anyway. However, I do want to say that special teams blunders played a big role in this loss for the Houston Texans. I think what was the final score? 23-14, I believe. And they gave up the kick return early. They missed a couple of field goals. One of them had gotten blocked. So there were times in this game where special teams really let them down. And the Chiefs, even after that big opening kick return, still got a lot of good kick returns and punt returns. So I think that is one of the major reasons why the Texans won this game. Another reason I think is Kansas City's.
Yeah.
Oh, what did I say? Oh, the Chiefs won this game.
Yeah.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful.
The Kansas City offensive game plan was good. It was the idea that Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley are going to take away your wide receivers throughout the entire game. So why even try to force it to those guys? They're going to play man coverage and they're going to be able to shut them down. They decided to just run Xavier Worthy almost every single route where it was either a deep vertical route or a post route, way down the field to just get the cornerback and the safety that was covering him down there as well. And Worthy played 95% of the snaps and was doing that almost every single time. So credit to his ability to stay fast and have stamina.
Yeah.
But then they gave Travis Kelce just open. They just let him be open.
and that's what happens when you send a guy that has the speed of Randy Moss deep. You have to bring 2 guys open. And then they had Travis Kelce in these leaks, where he's blocking at first and then just comes out. And in these trail routes where a runner goes through the zone of the Texans defense first, and that pulls the linebacker over, and then filling the space is Travis Kelce. That happened a couple of times. And then Kelce was just on Houston's bad cornerback, that Miles Bryant, who had a really tough day. Kelce had a couple of long catches against Miles Bryant, who isn't their normal nickel safety. That's Jalen Petrie, but he was out with an injury. So Bryant just got burned. So did Shahir as well in some of the zones. And then there were just pivotal moments. The Texans on that third quarter drive to start out, They were down by 7. They got the ball first in the third quarter, and they went on like a 10-minute drive where they mixed everything well. They were running the football, and they were able to pass the football well in the short game. There wasn't any pressure on that drive getting to CJ Stroud, and they mixed everything up, and Kansas City was on their toes. And Houston brought in 6 offensive linemen on those runs and just ran counters the whole time, and Kansas City couldn't get past those 6 offensive linemen. They go down, score a touchdown, and then the extra point is missed by Kaimi Fairburn. And when Fairburn misses that kind of gives the momentum back to the Chiefs. They go down and score, and that puts Houston into panic mode. They don't stick to their game plan that worked on the last drive. They're just like, okay, drop back 5 steps and throw the football. And that is when Steve Spagnuolo composed his symphony. He had rushed 4, maybe 5 throughout most of the game, which is not what Spagnuolo does. He blitzes a ton of players. And on that drive, he blitzed 6 guys, one after another. It was like the cymbals crashing after a crescendo in an orchestra where everything's just loud and it's just coming at you wave after wave after wave. And that threw CJ Stroud completely off the game. They didn't blitz like that after that drive, but Houston had to keep 3 guys in for extra protection in case they did, and that only had 2 or 3 wide receivers out in routes. Kansas City just able to double team both of those guys and make it hard for CJ Stroud to find anybody open, and he took more sacks because of that, and it was kind of just like a death spiral.
Now, one thing I want to ask here, those 2 15-yard penalties happened on third down, right? Both of them?
One of them happened on third down, and then one was on second down.
Did they lead to each of those drives in touchdowns? I believe they did, right?
They got a field goal on the first one. They got a touchdown. That was the touchdown that made it a 20-12 game instead of 13-12 on the second one.
So take 10 points off if they would not have extended those drives. Those penalties helped extend those drives. What would the score be?
They wouldn't have taken the intentional safety,
right?
So it would have been 13-12.
What I'm saying is, I think it does affect the game, and
sure.
It does start to, when the score goes up, it does start to like cause panic on the other side. Do I think Houston made mistakes? I absolutely do, but it's like you said, it's going to be known for how did the reffing of the game, the officiating of the game change the game, because that plays into the mentality of what happens as the score starts to run away, how players respond to that. And again, if you're great players, you can like keep that even keel, but it can still change the game. And it's unfortunate. It does feel so much like everything goes Kansas City's way. And I know they kept showing the where Jared Goff got hit and his helmet's like kind of almost flying off when he's at that space. And was he a runner by then? Well, whatever. He was, I think people are like, oh, he's still considered a defenseless person. You shouldn't be hitting him there. Regardless of all that, would that have been called differently if that was Patrick Mahomes? Absolutely. Yes. And there is something to be said there, and something needs to happen. And I don't know what's going to change it. I don't even know what's going to change it, but it does seem like Patrick Mahomes, and I know Tom Brady used to be accused of the same thing, right? Oh man, Tom Brady, everybody's watching out. And Tom Brady was the one who said, as you win more and more Super Bowls, you will first be a hero, and then you have to be okay becoming the villain. And Patrick Mahomes said, I've learned that, and I think he's embracing that well. And it's funny because they both have kind of that same, the refs call everything differently for you. And now Tom Brady's come out the other side, and for the most part, people like Tom Brady. So maybe Patrick Mahomes is like, well, you know what? I know everybody hates me right now and feels like I'm a big cheat right now, but when it all washes out, all they'll remember is all those Super Bowls. Not that he necessarily controls the refs.
Yeah. But part of it, I think, is the pregame experience, because what each organization does before the game starts is they meet with the referees. The head coaches do separately. And so I know Dan Campbell, using this example, pulled out a play on should we be allowed to hit someone if they do a fake slide, right? And used film of Patrick Mahomes doing a fake slide to go and get more yardage, or if they look like they're going to go out or they don't go out, like when are you allowed to hit them? And Dan Campbell, every game with the refs said, "Hey, I have instructed my guys to blow the living crap out of them if if they're active runners." And so Dan Campbell, for most of the season, was not called on those plays. Uh, Most notably, Caleb Williams had tried it and just got completely destroyed by the Lions secondary. And I'm sure the exact same thing is happening with Andy Reid when he meets with the refs. Hey, I have instructed my players to do this. It falls within these guidelines. And so it would have been more interesting. I know, spoiler alert, Detroit's out of the playoffs. We're not going to see them in the Super Bowl, maybe against the Chiefs, on how that was going to be prepared between Andy Reid and Dan Campbell meeting with the refs. And I'm sure there's going to be large conversations between Sean McDermott and the refs going into the game on how this is going to be treated and what he's instructed his guys to do.
It's too bad Sean Payton and the Broncos didn't make it to a game against Kansas City in the playoffs, because we could have had that bounty gate. I've heard everybody in social media saying, hey, if you're going to get flagged anyway, cream him as hard as you can and just take him out. That was the New Orleans Sean Payton thing that was happening, right? But you have to know players are getting super frustrated because he'll run out there, act like he's going to slide, run, and he's doing this, and they're like, what do we do? What do we do against this guy?
And he did that in this game where he was
whistle, right?
Yeah. And he did that in this game where he ran down the sideline and then got hit still in bounds and flopped back like he had just, got blown up. Even though it was a light hit, it was still in bounds, and tried to draw the flag. Thankfully, on that play, the referees saw through that. And maybe now that they see that and see what he's doing, they become a little bit more tentative to throw the flag. One can only hope that would be the case.
Yes. I mean, obviously, it is the headline. I think when I opened up Bing or whatever my search engine is, Explorer, when I opened it this morning, the very first thing was Kelsey and Mahomes answer, about rigged NFL, whatever. It is big enough that it's news on like non-football sites. Everybody's talking about it. So it better get some attention and difference in these playoffs. I just hope the Bills blow the tar off that game. Anyway.
And we'll get to that. I do want to say, I think it would be very ironic at the Grammys to throw a flag on Taylor Swift. Right.
Man, I was just going to say,
it would be very funny.
I know I'm a typical old football fan. Yeah.
They've already thrown a flag on Taylor Swift at the Grammys when Kanye West came up there, however many years ago.
Here's the thing. It was
I just
funny
think it would
because
be funny.
Caitlin Clark was in the box with Taylor Swift, and Caitlin Clark is a huge Kansas City fan, always has been. But I could even sense when they would show those two, and Taylor Swift is like, "Yeah," and she's wanting to hug. Caitlin's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm happy, but this is weird. This is weird."
Yeah.
For Caitlin Clark, it looked like she felt uncomfortable. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But.
All right. Well, I want to do something really quick. We're about to talk about the Washington-Detroit game. That's the next game chronologically to happen. But I'm going to interrupt it, and we're going to do the Houpt hour really quick, because I think this is the most appropriate place to place it.
Put it in.
This is these are Josh's instructions. I have been forgetting to make that video. We requested he makes a video to talk about this. But in case I don't make the video, he did not acknowledge this on the podcast word from word. So you go through this. So
he's pretty demanding.
He is. I want to make sure we honor him as the best we can. This season was full of big moments for this team, Washington. Yep. A team that was expected to have 5 to 6 wins, a quarterback that people thought would have a worse season situation than Caleb Williams, an offensive coordinator who questioned if they could make it work because of his past efforts, and a head coach who everyone regarded as last on everyone's pundit's board. All of these odds were overcome and proven false. Not only is Jaden Daniels having quite arguably the best rookie season of all time by a quarterback, he's elevated everyone around him to different levels. No way we would do this well without him, not a chance. People saw only Dan Quinn's free agency hirings as crazy, out of their primes, et cetera, et cetera. Every single player he signed has had a pivotal role on this team's success. All right, regular season. Now let's hop into postseason.
Real
As for
quick, before
playoff,
you go on, before I forget, I want to kind of answer some of these. First of all,
yes,
not everybody thought Caleb Williams would have a better year. I believe I said Jaden Daniels would, and I would choose him. And so did you, Brandon. Secondly, not everybody thought Cliff Kingsbury was like a bad coach hire. I thought that was a really good coach hire. Dan Quinn, I will admit, I said, why in the world would you hire Dan Quinn? Because he was with Dallas and their defense, he was defensive coordinator, was not inspiring. That's the only thing that gives me hope about this Cincinnati hiring. Right. Because I looked at when Dan Quinn was with the Cowboys and it did not look good. And I'm like, wow, man, I don't know about that. I would have gone a different way. And he has proven good. So I'll take that one on the chin. But, you know, some of those other remarks you made, not everybody thought that. Now, did a lot of people in America? Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Regular season over. Playoffs. As for playoff success, I'm on cloud 9 and higher. That is true. If you are in this group chat, you know.
Amen.
Did I think we had a chance against the Bucks? I did. Actually, I thought we would win. I would agree with that. Did I think we had a chance against the Lions? Not a chance. No way.
Same
Was a lot of games' success hinged on the Lions' mistakes? Mostly. But the offense Cliff Kingsbury constructed to exploit the Lions' defense while keeping it aligned with Jaden Daniels' play style is somewhat unnoticed. You didn't see Jaden Daniels make a mistake, and a lot of that credit is due to the offense he's in. That being said, do I think we have a chance against Philly? Unsure. That was a tough game. Their defense is one of the best in the league, which we were able to exploit earlier in the season, although we would have lost if Hurts wasn't injured. Remember, because Hurts went out.
Right.
It still stands as a testimony to what this team could do against the top dogs. Dog spelled the
DAWG.
Yeah, and I'm sure he wanted me to say it the same way Pat would say it. Dogs, right? Whatever happens, though, I'm glad to be here. This is the happiest I have ever been as a fan, ever. Shout out to Josh Harris and Adam Peters for constructing a season no Redskins fan has seen in 34 years, and some fans like myself have never seen. But I believe, and this is where he attacks us, Matthew. Again, word for word, word for word. But I believe the biggest shout out has to go to Brandon and Matthew. ... Early offseason 2024, these guys gave an over-under on how many games I'd be wanting Dan Quinn to be fired, both thinking I'd give up on him early midseason. And I'm going to respond to that, Josh. You asked us this question. We didn't bring it to you.
I'm also going to respond that you didn't totally disagree with us at that time. You
That's
were
right.
waiting and seeing. You said, I'll wait and see and trust what they do. But you weren't saying, I believe it's going to be great. Okay, continue.
Another ... We're 20 games, almost 21 games into the season, and I have not questioned him and his standards once, and I do not want him fired.
Nor have we.
So Josh's poem to us, and I just thought that was a good time to read it before we talk about this Commanders game, which, as Josh mentioned, no one in America, betting lines, professionals, everyone thought the Commanders would have a snowball's chance to win this game in Detroit.
Right.
And miraculously pulled it off, mostly due to like Jared Goff just throwing, was it 3 or 4 interceptions in this game? One of them was a pick six.
Made a big difference. And so on the other side of that, for Josh, I will say Jaden Daniels, what he brings is a very even keel, calm, cool quarterback. He never, even when it wasn't like, going their way at that moment, you would see him on the bench and he looked in control and he looked calm. And
he's not throwing, he's not spiking the tablet. He's not.
Right. And he's not like going crazy and throwing like, I just got to have this down, and throwing into bad situations. So that is to be commended, even though Jared Goff did make some mistakes that probably tilted that game a bit.
Jaden Daniels, I'll also mention, is a pretty classy guy with the media. Like, if you watch any of his post game press conferences or mid season reviews or anything, he's pretty even. He says it as he saw it, and he's not throwing teammates or organizations or anyone under the bus. Like he really is lifting people up.
Yeah, it really was a tale of two quarterbacks in the Detroit or the Washington win, where Jared Goff, no pressure, made so many mistakes. Not necessarily making the wrong reads, but like his first, he early in the game, he misses Jamison Williams on a deep post route, and it goes incomplete. Williams was open. He then misses a wide receiver on that pick six way over his head. He misses Jamison Williams again on another interception towards the end of that first half where it's underthrown. And it was a great play by Mikey Sandster still to undercut the route and pick it off. But like you put it in the right place, Sandster still just can't make that play. There was not pressure that was being forced on Goff. He was standing in the pocket and making these throws pretty much like unabated, and he still made those mistakes. On the opposite end, Daniels was facing a lot of pressure, and the Commanders in Cliff Kingsbury did what they could to stop that pressure from getting to him by like keeping Detroit off balance with some runs and then some like tight end leak plays and a lot of screens early on in that game. But Daniels was still getting hit. And early they're running those screens. One of them goes for a long touchdown. But like I also saw one of the best throws from this season where Jaden Daniels is backpedaling, getting hit, and then can't really step into his throw. And it's just a flick of the wrist. It's just the arm, maybe a little bit of, hip torque in there, but he didn't have much room for the hip torque. And he throws it 50 yards, a dime to De'Ami Brown downfield. And like, that's what we're going to get more of as Daniels progresses. They kept him pretty much in structure in the offense throughout most of this game, but we're just scratching the surface on who Jaden Daniels will be able to be when he gets even better in the coming years. So I think that is super exciting if I'm a Washington fan, because he is just so talented. And it came down to Daniels versus Goff, and Daniels was better.
Yeah. And that throw where, and maybe this is one you're talking about, where the receiver, the cornerback had his hand over the eyes of the receiver, and the receiver just kind of had his arms where it was, and the ball just went exactly where it was supposed to go. That throw is what we see from Jane Daniels. He throws really well. He knows when to throw it away. He knows when to run, to move around. He doesn't try to do too much. It is an exciting time. Not going to lie, I would love it if that's what we had with Anthony Richardson. And I know that C.J. Stroud last year was like, hey, look at him. I think even watching those two, I'm more impressed with the way Jaden Daniels handles it than C.J. Stroud. And I thought C.J. Stroud handled it really well. Very even-tempered. But I would see C.J. Stroud sometimes get pressured and, get off his game. I haven't seen that too much with Jaden Daniels. So it is exciting. And going into this game, it was tough because the two teams that I liked the most that were left were the Lions and the Commanders for different reasons. Lions because for years now I've been wanting them to succeed. Commanders because Josh Houpt and just loving this Jaden Daniels story and watching them. So it was the only way the Lions could have lost that would have left me still feeling like I'm still happy because I really wanted the Lions to go far this time. So I think with most of America, I really want to see Washington against the Bills. We're going to get to stuff here with these other games. But Josh, I just want you to know, with all of your points, we're probably more with you than you think. And we're excited for Washington and Jane Daniels and what that's going to be.
Yeah. Now I'm going to point out, I don't want to push the cart too far before the horse. My personal opinion is don't talk about the offseason of a team that's still playing, right? Like they still got potentially 2 games left. They have 1 guaranteed, potentially 2 if they win this week. The Commanders are set up in like the best cap position, one of the top 3 cap positions for this offseason. And Jaden Daniels just finished the first year on a rookie contract. If I was a betting man, I'd say, he's probably going to get the 5th year picked up. I think that's safe to say. But they can go and invest a ton of capital in some good guys to bring into this organization and really elevate it more. So the future for Washington is only bright. Also, Josh Houpt, this was not him, but I know he would like it. He's all about the meme, right? He catches all of them. He sends them to all of us 100% of the time. Dan Campbell in the last week of the season, and this was one that Josh and I had talked about, went up to Kevin O'Connell. He said, "Hey, I'll see you in 2 weeks, buddy." Turns out that 2 weeks was in Cancun. It was not in the playoffs. So there's the weekly meme that Josh and I had talked about.
Let's move to our third game from last week. By the way, congratulations, Commanders. Take command.
Is that what they say? Take command?
That was like the original like hashtag, like we're for the shoe. That was theirs, take command, but nobody ever says it except me.
Yeah. So, but when they put the Commanders Twitter page and it was official, it was hashtag take command, and then they cut it the next week. But we like it. Yeah. We think take command is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Eagles and Rams taking command of the snow and making a cinematic display of a great football game on Sunday. 28-22 was the final score, with the Eagles winning that game. The Eagles ran the ball exceptionally well, and so there was 2 long touchdowns by Saquon Barkley on the ground and 1 long touchdown by Jalen Hurts. All 3 of those plays we saw Jalen Hurts check the play at the line of scrimmage. So even though like he might not have had the best passing game, like numbers wise, like he was doing things that a quarterback needs to do in order to lead this offense, and reading the defense and saying, oh, okay, this is going to be open over here. It was good. And their offensive line did a fantastic job. I've noticed whenever Saquon Barkley runs the ball, it's a zone scheme. And then whenever Jalen Hurts runs the ball, it's pulling guard. So if you're the Commanders defense, heads up, they've probably seen that. Pay attention. Yeah. Pay attention to me and not your head coach or defensive coordinator. And Jalen Hurts didn't really have that bad of a game. I think people are blowing it a little bit out of proportion, at least from what I've heard. AJ Brown dropped a sure touchdown pass, and he had there were a couple other drops, and AJ Brown has been a problem so far in the playoffs. Like not for teams, but for his Eagles. He's had a lot of drops. He only has 3 catches in 2 games. He's been on the milk carton for Philadelphia's offense. Thankfully, their defense also played pretty well. They were able to get pressure without blitzing, which is what they do, until the 4th quarter. Then all of a sudden, it was kind of the same thing that Steve Spagnuolo was just boom, 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 5-man rush, 6-man rush. And then that was actually, though, played well for the Rams. Matt Stafford took control of that. The Rams went down 2 possessions after a long Saquon Barkley run, and then Stafford leads them down the field. They get a stop, and they go down the field again. But Jalen Carter, man, he is good. And for whatever reason, they decided not to double team him. They had double teamed him all game up to that point and kind of kept him a little bit in check as well as you could. But with the blitzes kind of opening up more gaps, they couldn't do that on that last drive as much because they needed everyone in to block. So to block one-on-one. So they tried to block one-on-one on Jalen Carter. Every time they tried to block one-on-one with Jalen Carter, he blew up the play, including a sack that forces a 4th and forever, and a prayer by Matt Stafford falls out of bounds, and the Eagles hold on to win. So yeah, good game. And snow football is just great to watch from at least like just a cinematic standpoint on the television.
Yeah, and they talk about like loving that, and when they were kids thinking, oh, I want to be playing in the snow. But you could tell at the end when they did the interview with Saquon and Jalen Hurts, they're like, what'd you think of the snow? They're like, I always liked snow in the football games, but you could tell they were like, it was tough out here today. There was a lot of you had to be like they kept talking about. Saquon Barkley had to be like right over top of his feet, which is not the way he normally runs. There's usually a lot of cutting, and his feet are far from him, and it's that getting the grip. He had to change that a little bit. Still did well. And they joked about how they only got 280 yards and they wanted 300 rushing yards total between the 2 of them. But it was of these games, it was one of the ones that I was more nervous about who was going to win, because Matthew Stafford did not look bad. The Rams easily could have cut that back and been in it right at the end. But Philadelphia is a tough team, and I think the Commanders are going to, we thought the Commanders against Detroit Lions was going to be tough, and it was, and we were surprised. I think it's the same way with Philadelphia. I feel like, man, it's a tough game. They could do it, and we'll be looking forward to that one. But let's look at this. Well, is there anything you wanted to say about this game, Brandon?
Yeah, I think the last thing in here, and we'll cover it a little bit when we talk about the championship week, is like Jalen Hurts at the end of that game was like, should he do the tush push? They're not sure. I mean, he is an injury concern right now. So I'm curious how this week he's preparing for the Commanders, because you can't have a quarterback out there in a in a championship game doing like 75 to 80%. You need a quarterback doing 100%. So it's just something to watch during the game this upcoming week.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the last one, Josh.
Yeah, Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. This one was a classic. The Bills get out to a hot start. They lead 21-10 at halftime, thanks to just Josh Allen with a lot of these like Josh Allen throws, getting the ball downfield. And James Cook did have some runs, but Josh Allen scores 2 touchdowns on the ground. Ray Davis scored the first one of the game, and that first half was kind of all Bills because Lamar Jackson threw an interception where I think there was some miscommunication with him and Rashad Bateman as to what route they were running, or Bateman on the choice route made the wrong choice, and it led to a Bills interception, and then he just straight up fumbled the ball, did Lamar Jackson, and that one led to a Buffalo touchdown. They shifted things in the second half for Baltimore, just focusing on the gap run scheme. And I think Buffalo is the only one of these teams that won the game despite losing in the trenches during divisional weekend, because Baltimore's offensive line and defensive line did a really nice job up front against Baltimore's did against Buffalo. And they just really ran the football a lot in that third and fourth quarter, got back into the game. They go down the field on the last possession and score a touchdown. However, Mark Andrews, they throw it to him in the flat for the 2-point conversion to try and tie the game. And Mark Andrews, who fumbled the ball earlier in the game, trying to be Barry Sanders after catching a football. Mark Andrews is not Barry Sanders. Mark Andrews turns faster after the or turns slower after the catch than the Titanic turned away from an iceberg, and then and so he fumbled there, and that led to the Bills getting the ball back on what was a promising Ravens drive, and then he drops the 2-point conversion, and Buffalo is able to win that game. So early in the game, the story was Lamar Jackson's turnovers. Late in the game, it was Mark Andrews.
And man, they were that close to that tie. I mean, everybody thought he was open. He was on the goal line. Everybody thought it happened until it didn't, until it fumbled out. Yeah. And everybody's like, no. All the Ravens fans, all the Bills fans were obviously very happy. But
and there was still a minute and a half left at that point. So it's not like Buffalo wouldn't have won the game. They still could have gone. There was plenty of time to go down and kick a field goal, but obviously him not catching it makes it pretty hopeless.
Yeah. So the maps that went out on the memes show that America wants Washington to win. America wants Buffalo to win. Only Philadelphia wants Philadelphia to win, and only Kansas City wants Kansas City to win. And so I am right with that, America. I want Buffalo and Washington in this Super Bowl. And if somehow it ends up Kansas City, Philadelphia, I'm going to be a pretty sad Super Bowl guy. I'll be rooting for the Eagles. I don't think that's any shock to anybody. But man, if it's Washington, Buffalo, you can't lose. I know Josh thinks you can, but for Buffalo, who's gone 4 times in a row and never gotten the Super Bowl, this would be their first Super Bowl win. If they win, that's great. For Jaden Daniels to have the best rookie year and take a team to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, that would be the best ever. Either win for me, not being one of those 2 teams, would be amazing and great. So we can only pray and hope. But I will tell you this, when we were going through last week and we were talking about who we thought would win, I said, I think Houston's going to surprise Kansas City and they're going to beat them. And I think Detroit's going to just kind of run over Washington. Yeah. And guess what? Neither one of those happened. And then we got to the second 2 games. I'm like, man, am I calling every one of them wrong? and
if history proves us right, we're good at that. We're good at that.
I said Baltimore would probably win, but I wanted Buffalo to win. So I didn't really say there, but I said I thought Baltimore would win, and that didn't happen. I got one right. I said Philadelphia. So I don't want to make predictions that are going to just jinx the game, but I'm going to make my predictions.
You want
here in just a
the
moment.
Eagles in Kansas City, right? Those are your official predictions.
I can't even say it. I can't even say it as a reverse psychology move. It just hurts too much coming out of my throat.
All right. Well, let's start with the first game we have. Both games are going to be on Sunday. We've returned to a complete Sunday slate. It's going to start at 2:00 on Fox. Commanders Eagles in Philly. Right now, Philly is a 6-point favorite, and I mentioned this earlier, where I'm not 100% sold that Jaden Daniels is going to be, or sorry, not Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts is going to be 100% for 100% of the game. I am sold that Jaden Daniels will be. And so the quarterback advantage, I give it to Washington. And if I'm Philly, I honestly don't want to put Kenny Pickett anywhere near the center. I would rather roll my odds with an 80% Jalen Hurts than I am going to with a 100% Kenny Pickett. And so I think Washington actually has probably closer than a 6-point game. I think Washington will win the game by at least a field goal. It's going to be hard. It's not going to really be like a cakewalk. We talked about this Eagles defense. They have a rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year candidate in the secondary. They have a defensive player of the year right there in their front seven. And so it's not going to be a cakewalk for them to go all the way into the end zone every time. But I do have confidence that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be able to scheme some stuff up just 3 or 4 times to help them go down the field. And so I like Washington in this game, just a little bit over Philly. And I know they battled hard during the season too. So Washington is my team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Washington as well. The Commanders' offense has been great against the blitz. Philadelphia won't blitz. So that is one thing that Jaden Daniels will have to get past, is that he's going to have to throw into tighter windows down the field because there's going to be 7 guys back there. However, you can scheme that up to get Jaden Daniels on the run on a lot of these play action bootlegs. And if you're sending a wide receiver deep down the field on one side of the field, he can run and pick up a lot of space there. Defensively, I think it might be a struggle for Washington. They did not look good against Jahmyr Gibbs in the run game, at least in the first half against Detroit. But maybe they have also noticed that on the zone schemes, it goes to Barkley, and on the gap schemes, it goes to Jalen Hurts. And if they have, that's a little bit of a tell that they can take advantage of. And in the second half of that game against Detroit, Washington's defense did do a better job and settle down, stopping Jahmyr Gibbs. He didn't have nearly the explosive runs that he had in the first half. So it's going to be making sure that you're not giving up big chunk plays. Barkley's going to break 1 or 2 loose and probably score long touchdowns. But on those drives where they have to sustain a longer drive, just keep fighting in the trenches. I think it's going to be a big game for Dante Fowler, who is like the only guy that was really good against the run and the edge rushing against Detroit. And I think it's going to be a big game on the ground for Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to go over 100 rushing yards, and the Washington Commanders are going to win this one by a score of 28-17.
Oh, that's right. You're doing the score call.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
31-28. 31-28, Josh.
Okay. I'm going to say I want Washington to win. That's why I said with Buffalo, and they won. Okay. I'm going to try and non-jinx but I want Washington to win. I believe they can. I believe this is a tough one, just like Detroit. I think Saquon Barkley is their biggest thing they have to control. And so, yes, Jalen Hurts also can run, and you have to watch that. But I think I'm going to put Washington winning, a very close one. Let's go another 27-25, just like the score from last week.
Let's go. This is for Josh Houpt. This is for all the rookie quarterbacks that made it to the championship game that couldn't get to the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, Joe Flacco, Mark Sanchez, Ben Roethlisberger, and Sean King, whoever that is, from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is for all of you guys.
For all of you.
Jaden Daniels. And I know some of them won Super Bowls later, but let's go. Let's go, Washington.
Rookie year, Jaden Daniels in the Super Bowl.
Command. Take command.
Command. Hail command.
I think
All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Bills-Chiefs game. What do you guys think about that one? I think so. I wanted the Chiefs to win last week because I wanted this. I wanted either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen slaying the Giants and getting to the really earning it and getting to the next round.
If you're going to be the best, you got to beat the best. That's the old saying. But okay, so I did not want this. I'm going to start because everybody knows exactly what I'm going to say. So we're just going to get this out of the way and let you two make good points. I think this is not what I wanted to happen, but this is the most picturesque way to do it for Buffalo and KC to meet again, and for it to come down to the wire, but for Josh Allen to win this time. Or actually, if that was my way, Buffalo would steamroll and the score would be so far that Kansas City had no chance at the end, and we never got to see Taylor Swift again in the second half. That would be
85-0.
That would be great, but I don't think that's
Yeah.
going to happen. I think it will come closer in the end. I'm just staying with the wants. I'm not saying anything else. I want Buffalo to win this one. And I'm just going to say, I want them to win it 38-17.
That's good, Matthew.
Probably won't happen, but this is me today. All right, you too.
I'll go next. Right now, for some reason, I can't explain. Kansas City's favored by 2 points. And we know Kansas City, they only lost 2 games in the regular season. We know they lost 38-0 to the Broncos in Week 18, not starting any of their starters. So, I mean, that's a bit more understandable, right? And then the other time they lost was, which
You
is
got
going
to
to be
whisper that louder. It didn't come through.
my whisper said against Buffalo was their other loss in the regular season. And so they had all of these super duper close games, except for their 2 losses. Next Week 18, starters weren't playing. Okay. They really only had 1 loss. It was against Buffalo. It was not a 1-score loss. Like, Buffalo manhandled Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, and their defense. I think we're going to see it again. I believe the first time they played, I don't know this for sure, it was in Buffalo. So they had the Bills Mafia right there. Bills Mafia, they're going to be traveling extremely well to Kansas City for this game. The energy is going to be absolutely electric. I want to be surprised if we had like a 35% market share of Bills fans in the audience, which is huge. The average for a traveling team is like 20%. So 35% market share of Bills fans in Arrowhead Stadium. I do think it will not be a close game. Buffalo has been in this position before. Buffalo is built to stop the Kansas City Chiefs at their best. And
to do
they've
that,
been working on that for so many years.
You have to beat the refs by making it so large, a couple calls don't change it.
That's right. And Matthew, you made a really big score prediction, 38-17. I love it, but I think it's going to be slightly less. I'm going to go 33-21 final score. Buffalo still with a substantial lead by the end of the game. It's not going to matter. Josh Allen can take a knee like 7 times in a row on 2 different drives, and they'll still win. They won't do that, but he could. He could do that. What do you got, Josh?
Yeah, so I think Buffalo's going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively against Kansas City. Kansas City struggled against Houston's 6 offensive line front, and Buffalo uses a lot of that 6 offensive line front when they're running the football. So James Cook is going to have a big game. There were some coverage busts in Buffalo's secondary, so I think Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquise Brown, all those guys can take advantage of that, and Travis Kelce. It's going to be a late field goal. The Kansas City Chiefs go up 33-36 with 13 seconds left to play. And the Buffalo Bills drive down the field. Tyler Bass exercises his demons from last year. They kick a field goal on those 13 seconds to send the game to overtime, where the Buffalo Bills win the coin toss.
Oh, man,
However,
you're going to give me a heart attack.
However, the Bills go 3 and out on their first overtime drive. Oh no, Josh Allen finally won the coin toss, and they don't get the score. See, we never needed to change the overtime rules. The defense needs to step up in times where it hasn't against Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes back to pass, fires right side, intercepted by DeMar Hamlin. Down the sideline he goes into the end zone, touchdown. The Buffalo Bills The Buffalo Bills win 42-36, the same score as the 2021-22 divisional game, and move on to the Super Bowl. After the game, Taylor Swift breaks up with Travis Kelce, and I tweet out the meme of Andy from Toy Story dropping Woody into the garbage can where he says, "I don't want to play with you anymore now that you're a loser and you're not in the Super Bowl." What did the Bills say? Bills Mafia or something.
That's right. And then all the Taylor Swift fans stopped buying Kansas City stuff, and the world is right again.
There we go. There we go.
Well,
this is how we achieve balance.
This, if I could be guaranteed it would end that way, would be the most exciting, but it would also be the most stressful. I like the 38-17 win myself, but that one would be the storybook right there.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
If the league is scripted, that is how it will end, and we will all know that that everything is farcical. So, but that is how I would script it if I was in the corporate offices.
All right.
Yeah.
So guys,
reach out to Roger.
that's how championship weekend's going to go. Watch it. Come back here next week. Listen to us talk about it because it's going to be great. Hey, I do think that's going to be it for us today here on the Football Fandemic. Thanks for joining us for all of our ramblings. Come back next week because there are more ramblings to be made as we talk about that championship weekend and look forward to the Super Bowl. See y'all then. Bye, y'all.